I promised to go into more detail about my thoughts on gender-specific sites, groups, events, etc., and why I don't typically participate in those things, specifically work-at-home mom or women's groups or women's events or things like that. And yes, I am a woman, and yes, I would be classified as a work-at-home mom because I'm a mother and I work from home. That said, and before we go any further, let me just clarify that what I'm talking about is in direct relation to the industry that I work in, the current time in history, this generation, and online business, internet marketing, the opportunity to work from home. This entire space that we work in is specifically what I'm referring to. I realize that there are gender issues outside of this space and of course outside of and prior to this generation. So all of that aside, right now, right here, today, in this industry is really where my focus is with this conversation, just to be clear. It really heated up 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5. There became a big gender debate within our industry, specifically within the internet marketing industry, with the number of men that were on stage at events, with the number of men who were doing major product launches, with the number of, men that were featured at this or doing that or what have you. So there was kind of an uproar, and they were called sexist, specifically because they didn't have more women on stage or they didn't have more women involved in their groups or what have you. And it wasn't by design. They never said, women can't join in or women can't speak at our events or what have you, outside of the rich jerk incident, which we just won't go into right here, right now. That was a whole different situation and scenario. At any rate, it really escalated when Stompernet came out with the Stompernet magazine, The Net Effect. And this was, I think, October 2008 or in the fall of 2008, maybe September. Anyway, the point being that they had their faculty on the front of the first issue of the magazine, and it was all male. So this just stirred a huge debate across the internet about Stompernet being a sexist company, about the fact that there weren't any women on the cover, there weren't any women on the stage, or very few, etc. And of course, it was women that stirred up all this controversy about men in the industry being sexist. Mind you, I was just standing back kind of looking at the whole picture, and I really didn't know how to respond to it because number one, there's blog her events that are specifically for women. There's workathomemom.com, wham.com, that's specifically sites for women. There are events and websites, and you could go on and on and on about the things that are exclusively for women where men are excluded. And while most of those sites will allow men, and the occasional men do come in and out of those sites or those events or what have you, the main basis is this is a group for women, we're all women, blah, blah, blah. And they don't seem to have a problem with that. However, when there's an assumed shutout by a group of men, or it's perceived to be that way, even when it's not specifically a men's event or a men's magazine or what have you, then there's this huge uproar. And so I just really tried to stay out of it. And at the time, there were things that I just couldn't say publicly. And I still won't mention any names or any companies or anything like that. But as a woman, I was invited to speak on stage. I was invited to participate in certain things. I was invited to be involved in certain product launches. And I declined. Now, those are not things I want to say publicly, because it might look bad on the company, and those were personal communications and private joint ventures that I chose to decline. And really, that's my right. It has nothing to do with the company. It has nothing to do with anything except, is it in line with my personal objectives or not? That's it, period. I don't care if they're male, I don't care if they're female, I don't care what it is. In fact, gender just doesn't come into my business decisions as much as, is this right for me? Does this keep me on my path towards my goals? Am I a right fit for them, etc.? And it's all skill-based in my opinion, and it's all objective-based. It's not gender-based. So my personal experience, all the way up to this point, all the way through the history of my business, my personal experience is that the men have been wonderful. The men have invited me to do things. The men have recognized my skill set, encouraged me to take things up a notch or what have you. And so with my personal experience, I can tell you without a doubt that the men in this industry are not sexist. They're not intentionally keeping women off stage or not including them in the things that they have going on. In fact, they want women to be involved. They invite women to be involved. It's just not always in line with the woman's objectives. And there are very few women, statistically speaking, the percentages of men who are up here at this particular level, the level that you have the qualifications that you need to speak on stage, to teach at an event, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. statistically speaking, there are many more men in that position than there are women, and that's by choice. That is not by design. That is not something that the industry is holding women back or what have you. This is not a generation or two ago, and that is not the case in this industry. I'll tell you from my personal experience that for many years, my highest priority was raising my children. You know, I had a special needs child, I had 2 young children, I was a single mother, and so jet setting all over the world and hitting the stages and being involved in this and involved in that was just not on my priority list. It just wasn't something I wanted on my plate at the time. I loved my quiet life, I raised my children, I focused on that, and I ran my business. And that's all I wanted, and that's what I did. And I turned down a lot of really good opportunities. The same opportunities that some other people say are not out there for women. And I know personally that they are. So let me try to wrap this up and keep it short and sweet. This is a really controversial topic. It's a hot topic. I blogged about it actually 3.5 years ago in October 2008. And I would really like for you to read that blog post because it conveys my thoughts on the topic very well. So I'll leave a link to that blog post below this video on lynterry.tv. So check that out, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. But that whole gender debate and that whole sexist war and that whole flame that just went up a few years ago really turned me off to gender-specific type things. And really you just don't see many male-oriented groups, you know, like men-only clubs or men-only websites or what have you, specifically in our industry. There are very few. But you see a lot of that with women. And I felt very awkward about it once the gender debate hit the net so hard. I felt very awkward about being involved in anything that's specifically for women, by women, work-at-home mom, that kind of thing, because I felt like it was a double standard. I felt like it was a huge double standard to have all these different groups and opportunities and sites, etc. out there just for women, but yet at the same time, men unintentionally don't have a woman involved in their company and they're immediately labeled as sexist, or you don't like women, or you're holding women back, or what have you. And that really bothered me, and I felt really uncomfortable with the whole scenario. And so I distanced myself from anything and everything gender specific at that point and going forward, and really just try to keep my toes out of it. So check out the blog post below the video. Like I said, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. That will give you a little bit of background on why I stay out of gender-specific type things. But as I said in the last video, I will be writing at itsawhamthing.com. I'm excited about that project. I think that it's kind of cool that after all of these years, 2 women successful in their own right outside of and before this website ever launched have brought a site together that has the opportunity to completely change the stigma of wham. So cool thing, and just, you know, a lot of feelings and thoughts and such on that topic. I have mine. I'd love to hear yours.